religion didn't come till about 1200 AD.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we know that all these things happened
Yeah,
long before. I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah,
I
that's
let you
irrelevant,
talk,
dude.
and
Yeah, that's irrelevant.
I let you talk, and I actually went to bat for you for people to shut up while you were talking. I would sure appreciate it if you would shut up while I'm talking. The
Yeah,
fact
but
of the matter is, sir.
saying post hoc has something to do with truth value. You're saying
Have a
post hoc.
nice day, sir.
Okay. So you're saying that post hoc
If you're
has
not
something to do with truth
interested
value.
in providing me with the same courtesy I was
Exactly.
willing to fight for you to have, then I'm not interested in talking to you.
It's
Repent
exactly-
or perish, sir. You're on your way to hell. Have a nice day.
Oh yeah, dude.
So the conversation would have went if it was Jay.
Trying to dodge the situation, right? When I told him that post hoc has nothing to do with whether something's true or not, then he completely dodged the question and now is trying to threaten me by fear tactics. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. Anything that deviates away from the Eastern Orthodox faith is no longer accounted. Hold on one second. Jamie, 1 second.
It's not a bad impression. I think Jonathan Talks does a better impression, though.
I would agree, Mr. B33.
So, Mr. Batman, you should consider doing like an hour video on like biblical health and like your physical transformation. That'd be interesting.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, since COVID hit, after I lost my maximum amount of weight, I got down to about 180. I put about 40 pounds on real quick because of COVID, and I'm still struggling with getting that back off. But now that I'm working full time again, it's actually starting to drop off a little bit of at a time. Now, my wife, on the other hand, she has lost more weight than she currently weighs right now. She weighs about 140. She's lost 165 pounds.
Good job.
Yeah. Yeah, I was so thinned down last summer from all the walking I was doing because my pants were flying down. Then winter came and
very good job.
But yeah, I'd like to hear what you did with your diet sometime because I want to. I put on some weight and get blood sugar. I'm crossing over into my late 30s now. So
certainly, I'd be happy to tell you. It's a very short story. My wife and I, we had both had bariatric surgery. We had experimental bariatric surgery called laparoscopic banding. At that time, it was experimental. Didn't work on either one of us. They shouldn't have put it in her because she had fibromyalgia, which actually causes the internal organs to reject the artificial parts of the weight loss equipment. On my part, because I lost my insurance, I couldn't go to have the adjustments. And because of that, the port was pulled to one side and caused a kink in my esophagus. I was having trouble swallowing water. So they had to go in and give us new different tools to use. They gave me the gastric sleeve. They gave my wife the gastric bypass. So once they did this, and they started us down that process, the doctor looks at me and says, well, you're going to lose about 5 pounds. Men lose their weight pretty fast, so you can lose it in about a month, and then we can schedule your surgery. Now, you also have to understand, my wife already had it on her schedule when we're going to go see the grandbabies, when we're going to go do this and that and the other. She had all her schedule lined out when the surgery was going to happen. She knew exactly when everything was going down. So then the doctor comes up to her and says, ma'am, you, on the other hand, you're holding your weight all right over your liver. So you are going to have to lose about 25 pounds. And unfortunately, it takes women a lot longer to lose weight than it does men. And it's going to take you about a year to lose that much weight so we can get that weight off your liver before you can have your surgery. Now, immediately, my wife looked at this man and says, oh, no, you didn't. And so we went home and my wife made my life a living hell. She got rid of every carb, every sugar. I mean, Pop-Tarts was one of my favorite food groups. She got rid of all that crap. I mean, we changed everything that we did. And then we started exercising on a regular basis. Now, my wife has had 2 strokes, and they told her that she would never ride a 2-wheel bicycle. We had her a 3-wheel bicycle. She said, I'm not riding that damn thing. I want a 2-wheel bicycle. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're going to wreck. And sure enough, she did the first couple of times. Do you know every time we would go to church after she wrecked her bicycle, she had bruises all over her arms and legs. They would pull her off to the side and say, "Is everything okay at home?" I mean, we went to the doctor one time, to the weight loss doctor, and she got bruises all over because we'd gone to our regular doctor. We rode our bikes down there, and the doctor told her, "We're going to have to wrap you in bubble wrap next time you ride your bike." Well, we had ridden our bike down there. She gets on her bike. She no more than puts her leg across the seat and falls flat over. I thought she broke her arm. She hit so hard, and now she's bruised completely up. We go to the weight loss doctor 2 days later, and she's all bruised up. First thing they do, they separate us. They put me in a room. They put her in a room, and they say, "Is everything okay at home? Do you need
Batman,
anything?"
you should have had her say, "Yeah, he only hits me on my legs."
You know what was really funny is we went down to Brown County, a place where there's really beautiful areas, vistas, and during the fall season. So I put her in front of this big vista, this underneath this big oak tree, beautiful scenery. She's standing there. I'm getting the tripod all set up. And all of a sudden this acorn comes down and hits her right in the forehead. And it goes pop. And she goes, "Ow." And I didn't see anything at first. The next day I get up and she's got this bruise the size of a golf ball on her forehead. I'm like, oh crap. I'm going to be explaining this to everybody at church.
Mr. Batman, why are you beating your wife?
I only beat my wife if she needs it, sir, and she very rarely needs it.
No, I was mimicking what they would say at church.
I like that attitude. I don't beat. I really like. I like
beat
it.
My wife, sir. They presuppose that beating of the wife happens, but only when it needs to happen.
I like the way you frame that,
like Christian love,
because you could say I never beat my wife, but only because she's never required it. So you're off the hook, but you're still maintaining your principles.
He's lighting up, but I can't hear him.
What's that? I didn't catch that. You're kind of low.
One of the very first times we went out bike riding. Now she had just gone off the tricycle. She's now on a two-wheel bike, and she still does not know how to turn her corners very well. And so we're turning a 90-degree turn around this corner. And again, I'm going down back streets because I don't want her down on main streets because she's going to run out in front of a car and get us both killed. And so anyway, she starts to make this turn, and I said, "Honey, turn, turn, turn." And she doesn't turn very hard. Well, she does one of these, sliding into first base, jumping off the bicycle type of things. Luckily, there happened to be a postman standing right there when she did it. And he goes, "Are you all right, ma'am?" And she jumps up and says, Yeah, I'm okay. I said, "Sir, can I get your name and your badge number? Because I'm probably going to need you to explain it to police officers a little bit later."
That's awesome.
Batman.
Yeah.
Zap. That's about 2 weeks ago. I got out of the figure.
I am the proclaimer of the Messiah, destroyer of false worldviews. And guess what, sir? Yours is next.
What is he, like some thorough Batman?
Good catch.
Anybody ever notice that when you're a
Religious
kid, you don't
Batman.
realize that you're watching your mom and dad
You
grow
don't
up?
get this old with this type of attitude without actually having some way of defending your position, both physically and mentally.
Mr. Batman, do you have any
Is that
information
what
that contradicts the law of one?
I'm sorry, sir. Somebody spoke over you. Contradicts the law of what?
I'm not sure if you're even familiar with it, but the law of one, like the number one. I was just curious if anybody's ever asked you about that before, if you had any information that contradicts that.
No, sir. I've never been asked that question before, but the law of one, I would have to say, goes with the fact of the Shema statement that the Lord our God is one. That one God reveals himself to us in three distinct and unique ways. That's God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. They are one in essence, but three in being.
Okay. So the law of one that I was referring to talks about there is one infinite creator, and it is all that there is, and that we are all it.
We are the creator.
Well, no, everything, all of existence is the one infinite creator, and we are part of it.
That doesn't make any sense, sir. Because if we are created, then we cannot be the creator. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Well, if we each individually have the power to create,
What do you have the ability to create, sir?
I can create a lot of things.
Oh, great. Give me one.
Well, I think the most powerful thing we could create would be a new human.
I'm sorry, sir. You don't create that. You form that from another human being. You need another human being in order to form a human being. You don't create. Create means ex nihilo, out of nothing. You have the ability to create nothing.
Okay.
Even besides ex nihilo, it's not creating a human. You're begetting it through a natural process. You couldn't create a human artificially.
As far as making a baby, that's the only thing I can think of that we can't create necessarily on our own. But creation, if I have an idea for an invention, something that, like, if I had a new app that I wanted to make, I could write the code for that, and that thing is something I created. Even if I created a new Discord server, for example, I could create a new.
Questions about that?
Sure.
Great. So the Discord server that you created because you came up with this new idea for a Discord server, does Discord need to exist?
Yes.
Great. That's made up of time, space, and matter. Where does time, space, and matter come from so you can create this new Discord server?
Well, everything that we create is created from building blocks that already exist.
No, sir. You did not create the building blocks for humanity, the building blocks for reality. You sure as hell didn't create Discord. Because
no, I'm not saying that I did.
If you created Discord, sir, it'd probably work a hell of a lot better than what it does. I'm trying to give you a compliment here, sir.
Okay, no, I understand.
Okay. So once again, sir, you did not create these things. You use these things to form things out of other things. That's not the same as creation.
But what if he creates a theorem?
Maybe the point I'm missing.
What if he creates an immaterial theorem, right? So there's no transformation of material. It's an idea. Right?
Okay. Maybe what I'm talking about is just the topic of creativity. We are creative beings. We have creativity. Like if I was going to bake a cake, yes, I go by a recipe. I might come up with a new recipe myself, but I'm using ingredients that already exist, that are available to create something new that didn't exist in and of itself previously.
Really? I believe that the flour, the sugar, the milk, everything, the baking powder, everything that you're going to use to create that cake existed previously.
It did, but if you just put all those things on the counter, it's not a cake.
It doesn't matter, sir. They existed previously. That's the problem. Now, if you're going to say that you're using your creativity didn't exist previously, but wait a minute, where does your creativity come from? Doesn't that come from your mind?
Yes.
Great. Your mind, does it not require chemical reactions and chemical compounds?
Yes.
No, it doesn't.
Excellent. So now that your mind requires chemical reactions and chemical compounds, these are laws that never change over time. Where do laws of chemistry where do they come from that never change over time?
I'm not trying to suggest that we have the ability to create matter out of nothing.
I did not ask you that, sir. I asked you a very laser beam focused question. I would appreciate an answer to that question.
I'll try. Say again.
Yes, sir. In order for your mind to have creativity, your mind utilizes laws of physics, laws of chemistry, chemical reactions, and chemical compounds. Where do laws of chemistry come from? What causes them to be? What causes these laws of chemistry never to change over time? And what's going to cause these laws of chemistry to be here again tomorrow so you can have creativity one more time?
I believe, and my answer would be the laws of nature.
I'm sorry, sir. The laws of nature are these laws of chemistry. The laws of chemistry are part of the laws of nature. Now you're talking about the uniformity of nature. I happen to teach science. The uniformity of nature is the fact that all of the physical world works under uniform law-like patterns. These uniform law-like patterns are called natural laws, laws of gravity, magnetism, thermodynamics, physics, biology, logic. All these things come from somewhere. What would be the cause of these natural laws? What would be the cause of these natural laws not changing over time? And what would be the cause of these natural laws being unchangingly so tomorrow, so you and I can have the same discussion one more time?
The logical, loving, law-giving God Elohim.
Well,
there you go, Mr. B33. I'm so proud of you.
So I'm not sure that I heard what he said, and I'm not sure that I have an answer to that, and I would like to know your answer to that question.
Actually, sir, it's not that you're not sure. You do not know. Go ahead and admit that you do not know.
Well, I have some hypotheses that are unproven to me.
Knowledge is a justified true belief. Do you have any knowledge of where these things come from?
Are you asking where they originate from?
That would be a no, sir. You have no knowledge of where these things come from. Is that correct?
I do not currently possess. If I do, it's in my subconscious brain and I'm not aware of it. But I'm not consciously aware of the origination of the laws of nature.
Great. So that means because you do not know where they come from, when I tell you the truth about where they do come from, you cannot tell me that I'm wrong. You know why? Because you don't know where they come from. Because these laws,
you're right.
I'm sorry, sir, don't interrupt me. I will mute you in a heartbeat.
All I said was you're right.
Thank you. So once again, these laws come from an eternal, universal, unchanging lawgiver Elohim, the Most High Elohim, the God of the Bible, who is the one who actually creates, who sustains, and maintains all of the physical universe. The fact of the matter is, sir, you cannot explain anything in the physical world without this metaphysical God.
Okay.
Well, what about the creation?
I agree, and I will not say that you are wrong. I cannot dispute the evidence you are presenting. Sir. However, I cannot also just take your word for it.
I don't want you to take my word for it, sir. I never, you know what I tell my students when I'm teaching them? I teach science, I teach Bible, I teach speech, I teach geography, I teach social studies. I tell them all, in every subject that I teach, do not trust me. Do not believe me. Do your own homework and fact check me. And if I'm wrong, I want you to come and tell me. But you know what? In the 10 years that I've been doing this, I've yet to have one person come and tell me that I'm wrong.
And I'm not telling you that you're wrong. I am interested, though, in what evidence you have to back up your claim for the origination of the laws of nature.
Oh, that's easy. Because there has to be a lawgiver that doesn't change over time. Would you agree that laws of nature do not change over time?
Yes.
Okay. Well, wait a minute. One of these laws of nature that doesn't change over time is called entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, also known as thermodynamics, the thermal equilibrium. Okay. Now, since we know that everything in the physical world is constantly changing over time, we know that these laws that exist in the physical world that do not change over time cannot come from the physical world because it constantly does what? Changes over time. So that means these laws are metaphysical or supernatural laws. So since we've now deduced that these laws are metaphysical, supernatural, what would be the cause of these supernatural metaphysical laws that don't change over time?
Again, you're in a territory that I don't know, so I'm just asking you to tell me.
Great, no problem, sir. That would be an eternal, universal, and unchanging lawgiver God, an immaterial, all-powerful, all-knowing, loving, living, logical lawgiver, Most High Elohim. And I can prove each one of those scientifically because I happen to be a science teacher, and I love science.
If you said the evidence already, I'm not sure that I picked up on it.
Great. Where does time, space, and matter come from, and how do you know that?
Again, I don't have answers to these questions. I was asking
sir,
you to just tell
when
me.
you say you don't know, that's fine. You can't tell me I'm wrong, even though you say, well,
I'm
I
not
don't
trying to
agree
tell
with
you you're
that.
wrong.
You can do that all you want. But you don't know. Time, space, and matter had a beginning. Anything that has a beginning is known as an effect. Every effect must have an adequate cause. The adequate cause of time, space, and matter must be timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. Whatever created time did not need time in order to create time. See how easy that is? Whatever created space did not need space in order to create space. Whatever created matter did not need matter in order to create matter. See how that works?
Yes.
So right there, we got timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. Now, all powerful. Let me ask you a question. Do you know how much energy is released when we split a couple of atoms? It's called an atomic bomb.
I know that I weigh 390 pounds, and if you converted me to kilowatt hours, it's like 4.4 trillion.
Yes, lots and lots of energy. So when you split a couple of atoms and you drop those bombs that split a couple of atoms on a couple of little cities like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you wipe those cities off the face of the planet. Now, if that much energy is released when we split a couple of atoms, how much energy does it take to create a couple of atoms?
I believe they would just create, and this is a guess, that they would be created through natural attraction like gravity. I'm assuming particles form when photons attract to each other and then build bigger and bigger clumps.
Actually, sir, you'd be totally wrong.
Okay.
You probably need to study your laws of thermodynamics.
Probably.
Are you familiar with the first law of thermodynamics called the conservation of mass and energy? Remember,
no, sir. I'm not very well educated. I'm not very well educated, admittedly.
Okay, no problem. I'd be happy to educate you. The first law of thermodynamics, called the conservation of mass and energy, tells us that matter and energy cannot be created nor destroyed now. But it did have a beginning in the distant past because of the second law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics tells us that all matter and energy is changing over time. It's going from a state of order to disorder, from workable, usable energy to no workable, usable energy. It also tells us that this energy, as it's changing over time, does so based on a specific pattern. This pattern was set up by the Creator God. Now, once we look at these two patterns together, the first law and the second law of thermodynamics, you know what we get? We get a personal agent God. Because if all you ever have is an eternal cause, then the only thing you should ever expect to see is an eternal effect. But we don't see that. You know what we see? We see that matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed now. Why? Because God stopped his act of creation, just like it says in Genesis chapter 6. He rested on the seventh day of creation. Now, why is that? Because God said so. Ooh, that's easy.
I might be misunderstanding, but I sense a possible contradiction. If you're stating that something exists eternally, would not that mean that there is no start and end? It just simply is always.
What would be the thing that exists eternally, sir?
Well, you were using the word eternal.
Yes, sir, I was. But
what were you using that in context of?
What would you say exists eternally?
Everything?
No, sir. Time, space, and matter had a beginning. What is eternal are the laws of logic. The laws of logic, they had no beginning. They have no end. They are truly eternal. They are universal, and they are unchanging. Eternal, universal, unchanging, and they work everywhere that we see. Why, sir? Why do they work that way?
Would you enlighten me?
No, sir. I want you to first say you don't know.
Okay, I don't know.
Great. Now, since you don't know, I'm happy to tell you. The reason laws of logic work this way because they are attributes of the living God. When you look at Romans chapter 1, starting at verse 18, it says, for the wrath of God, this is called a revelational epistemology, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and wickedness of men, who by their wickedness suppress the truth. What truth might that be? The truth that God is. For what can be known about God is plain to them is everybody, because God has shown it to them. Once again, them is everybody. Namely, his eternal power, his divine nature, hold on to this one, his invisible attributes have been clearly perceived, clearly seen, ever since the creation of the world, and everything that has, not a few things, not a couple of things, but everything that has been made, so that you, sir, have no excuse. Claiming yourself to be wise, you become a fool. No. Let me go ahead and ask you a question. Since God's attributes are made known in everything that is, how do you think God makes his invisible attributes known in everything that is?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm glad you said it that way, sir. Thank you very much for being honest. I really appreciate your honesty, and this makes the conversation much smoother. Because you don't know, God gives us the laws of identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. These are the basic necessary preconditions for intelligibility. So, in order for us to know anything at all to be true, we first have to be able to identify it. That law of identity states that A is A, something is what it is. It has unique, exclusive, and immutable properties that make it exclusively, immutably what it is. So guess what? That right there is a law of logic that cannot be explained without the God of the Bible.
Just to be honest with you, I think I lost you a little while back. I think I got stuck and I wasn't able to follow along with everything around when you said matter and energy cannot be created nor destroyed. But then I also heard you say that it was created.
Yes, sir. I understand that. Matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. Now listen to the next word. Now. Matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. Now. But
Okay.
we do know that matter and energy was created because all matter and energy, all time, space, and matter was created and wound up to the least amount of entropy so it could wind down to the maximum amount of entropy. This is called the second law of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics, called the conservation of mass and energy, says matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed now, but it can only change form over time.
Right.
How does it change form over time? It decays in entropy. So,
Yes.
once again, this is what you missed out on. You missed out on one word, which screwed up your entire definition.
Okay. So what I hear you saying is that now all matter and energy is eternal.
No, sir. No, sir, it's not. Please pay attention. Matter and energy cannot be created nor destroyed now. But
Okay.
all time, space, and matter is decaying over time and will come to a maximum amount of entropy, which is called heat death. Everything in the physical world will die. Everything will come to a point of heat death. So it's not that it's eternal, sir. It will die. So anything that has a death had to have a beginning. Do you see the difference there, sir?
So are you talking about basically like the big crunch? Like if everything collapsed down to to another singular mass?
No, it's the other way around.
No, sir, because there's no such thing as the big crunch. Number one, even if there were, and I love to do this, sir, because this is how Christ answered all his questions. He would say, okay, even if your position was correct, let's go ahead and run with it. Even if your position was correct, it would still succumb to the second law of thermodynamics. So it could not infinitely crunch and uncrunch, crunch and big bang, crunch and big bang. It could not infinitely do that. it would eventually run out of energy to do so. But number two, you have all of time, space, and matter expanding in all directions simultaneously, and their speed is increasing exponentially. That means you do not have enough gravity to bring everything back to a big crunch. That's a big problem there as well. And even if that was not the case, let's go ahead and run with that. Even if that was not the case, even if you could say that did work, guess what? You still have no explanation where time, space, and matter comes from, where laws of logic and laws of nature come from, and why the physical world works the way it does. Excuse me one moment. I got to go check on my wife again. She recently had surgery, so I got to go check
No
on
worries.
her.
Thank you for your patience with me. Thank you. For
Oh,
teaching.
no problem at all, sir. I really have enjoyed our conversation. You have been one of the better people I've talked to in this server, so I must say thank you very much. But my wife had kidney surgery, so I got to check on her everywhere, make sure she's not bleeding all over the bed. I'm not laying down in bloody bed.
Do your thing, brother.
Thank you. Be right back.
Did you ask him to give an argument that why beginning requires cause?
No, I guess the contradiction I was sensing was saying that the laws of nature are eternal. And though he also said that there was a start and end. And so I had sort of previously held the belief that there was no start and end of this. It's just always existed and will always continue to exist. That's the eternal to me, is that eternal means there is no start and end.
Well, so I think by eternal, what Batman, what he means is unchanging and variable. Like, he doesn't mean they didn't have a beginning.
Invariance, not invariable.
Either one is.
So I guess I was talking about the concept of infinity, of that it is that there is no start or end. It is just continuous.
Isn't he making an equivocation between heat death, the inability for transfer of energy to take place, and the end of the universe? I mean, it's not. Right, everything that was.
That's what it sounded like, and I'm not I don't believe one way or the other because I don't know. I won't claim to know if there was a big bang and a big crunch, and if it's been repeating. I have no idea. I've heard other people's hypothesis on this, but I have not formed my own opinion of it. And the way that he was describing it to me when he was talking about like the end of the universe and all the entropy, the vision I got was what he was saying is that eventually everything is going to collapse down into one thing again. So
no.
Does he know that for certain?
Maximum.
It's all pretty provisional, right? All
it's very provisional.
Right. And I understand his argument. I don't have anything to refute it, so I can't say he's wrong, and I won't say that he's wrong.
No, but I think he's making an equivocation because say we grant that there's maximum entropy, right? Which really just means that there will not be enough variance in energy profiles for energy to change its frequency, so there's no transfer energy, so things simply stop operating, right? There's no new movement, no transfer of energy in the universe.
Ben and Mr. Batman in the same VC.
So that if that is true and that happens, he's equivocating as far as I can tell, saying that something like that would be as if matter had an energy, had an end, but it doesn't really have an end. It just the profile that allows it to be active, that allows it to make transfer of energy and change, just stops being able to do that because there's no energy differential that allows the transfer of energy. So I don't see how that's the end of the universe. That's just the end of the universe operating in a way.
It's the end of change besides the random fluctuations.
Hello again, Mr. Batman.
Thank you. What is energy, sir?
What is energy? Do you mean like in a metaphysical way?
No, sir. In the physical way, in our physical universe, what is energy and how is it utilized?
So, if you mean in the general sense, like what is actual energy, the thing that makes up reality, I don't really know what it is in the metaphysical sense.
I think I remember from science class, they said there was two kinds, potential and kinetic.
Yeah.
Potential and kinetic.
I think it has something to do with the ability to perform work or cause motion.
Both of
which,
potential and kinetic energy are based on differences of heat.
Yeah.
You have heat differences that allow you to have energy. Now, once again, if you're going to have any, this is true whether you're talking about a steam engine from the 1800s or a nuclear reactor of today. You know what they use? They use heat to produce steam that pumps a particular type of motor. Wow. We haven't changed that much over a couple of hundred years now, have we?
Right.
I think although any kind of work energy necessarily uses the same kind of energy that creates entropy, because everything that is done creates entropy, right? Even if it's not done on purpose. Everything that happens increases entropy. But
no, sir. Entropy happens on its own. It doesn't have anything that actually helps it move on its way.
No, there are high entropy local systems.
Entropy is a physical attribute of our physical
world. No, there are high and low entropy local systems.
I'm sorry, sir. Entropy simply is.
You can go ahead and make claims.
It is a natural law that never changes over time.
Yes, it does.
Because of which we don't have to worry about what we do to change entropy.
There are high and low entropy.
Next.
Okay, you can lie. That's fine if you want. And just ignore the fact that there are local, low, and high entropy systems. You can if you want to ignore that, but that definitely exists.
You guys are talking past each other.
He wants to pretend that entropy is some kind of...
He's too stupid to have the conversation.
I had to look up the definition of entropy myself.
Yeah.
Says a thermodynamic quality.
So in a thermodynamic system that is closed, Mr. Batman, that is closed, is there a notable difference between closed and open thermodynamic systems in entropy? Or, as you say, is entropy universally decaying at the same rate? Is energy decaying at the same rate universally? I want to know, since you know everything about it, what you think about that.
Probably has you muted.
Yes, sir, I do.
I knew it.
Talking over me, he's not worth talking to anymore.
What? So, Mr. Batman. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Why do you think all things that begin require cause?
Because there's such a thing called the law of cause and effect. Anything that has a beginning is known as an effect. Every effect must have an adequate cause. We've never, in all of the time we've been observing everything in the physical world, we've never observed anything that does not have a cause that had a beginning.
Okay, so do you think the law of cause and effect is eternal?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay.
And let me change that. Let me change that statement just a little bit. No, sir, I don't believe that it's eternal. I know that it's eternal. See, you can believe that there's pink unicorns on the dark side of the moon pooping out laws of logic. That's irrelevant. I know the laws of cause and effect are eternal because they're attributes of the living God, and they are eternal.
Okay. So, independent of our experience, is there any reason to say it's impossible? And for the effect argument, right? That just seems to be a weird definition of effect. I've never heard such a definition.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm having difficulty understanding what it is you're trying to convey.
Like, I've just never heard of your definition of cause and effect before.
Really? Have you ever taken a science class?
What?
Okay, great. The law of cause and effect. Anything that has a beginning is called an effect. You, sir, are called an effect. Now, every effect must have an adequate cause. What would be the adequate cause of you? What do you think is the adequate cause that made you become a being?
So,
his parents had sex.
Sorry?
Weren't you created by your parents?
Sure, but like, okay, where are you getting this from? Your definition, just to be clear.
It's called Science Books. I've been studying science now for about 40 years. I love science. I teach science. I also teach science in tandem with the scripture. Now, since we know that anything that had a beginning had to have a cause, and there must be an adequate cause for everything that had a beginning, what would be your adequate cause, sir?
Adequate cause?
Yes, sir. Would you agree that you required two people to bring you into being?
Mm-hmm.
Great. And they required two people to bring each one of them into being, correct?
Can you repeat that?
Yes, sir. That each one of your parents, that they had parents of their own. So each one of their parents had parents, and each one of them had an adequate cause, which would be their own parents, which would be your grandparents, back to the great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents, all the way back to the very first two people who ever were, Adam and Eve. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I have to go for a second. I'll be back.
Have a nice day, sir.
Mr. Batman, can I ask you the question? You know, with regards to the cause and effect, would you agree that? Would you agree that every cause is simultaneously also an effect, and that every effect is also simultaneously the cause of something else?
Nope.
Okay.
You know why?
Mr. Batman, how old is the Earth?
One moment, Mr. Strong. I'm happy to answer your questions because I really enjoy your conversations as well. But I'm speaking with Mr. Russell at the moment. Now, once again, sir, would you like to know why every single effect is not automatically a cause and every cause is not automatically an effect?
I would love to.
Excellent, sir. So, when we think about time, space, and matter, it had a beginning. So, that beginning must be timeless, spaceless, immaterial, all-powerful, all-knowing, a loving, living, logical lawgiver Elohim. That God had no beginning and has no end. Do you see how that works?
I do, but because I have to take an assumption here that what you're saying is that there was a beginning. I can only assume, if I take your word for it, that there was a beginning, then I'm basically taking on an assumption.
I don't want you to take my word for it, sir.
Right, I know. So in order for me to follow the rest of your argument, I have to take that assumption on that there was a start. No, would you acknowledge that there's a possibility? The alternative would be that there was no start and no end.
No,
it was just
sir,
everything was.
Will not acknowledge that because I don't want you to trust me. I don't want you to believe me. I want you to fact check me. As a matter of fact, the second law of thermodynamics tells us that everything that had a beginning is called an effect. Every effect must have an adequate cause. Now, because everything decays over time, that's the second law of thermodynamics, we can look at all of the physical universe around us, and we can see that the bright, shiny yellow ball in the center of our universe, we call that the sun. It is much hotter than where we live on the shiny blue ball called the Earth. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Great. So that means that those two things could not have been in the same environment for an infinite amount of time in the past. Because if they were, they would be at the same temperature called thermal equilibrium. Let me give you a simple physical experiment that you can do in your own home. You take a cup of hot steaming coffee, you take that coffee and you put it in the middle of your coffee table and you walk away for 3 hours. You come back 3 hours later. What happens to the temperature of the coffee in the coffee cup?
Well, I agreed before you gave me the example, so it might be a little extraneous, but it reaches room temperature.
Not quite. It
Well,
will
technically,
eventually,
technically,
but
it does
will
raise the room
eventually.
temperature. It
The
raises
longer those two things are in the same environment, the
right.
closer
It
they
reaches
will
an
become to
equilibrium.
room temperature until there is no measurable difference between the coffee and the coffee cup and the
Right.
temperature of the room. This is
Right.
called thermal equilibrium. The same is true in everything in the physical universe. So
Right.
if the physical universe had been here for an infinite amount of time in the past, there should be no temperature differences anywhere in the universe, including our solar system. So, number one, we see the sun and our Earth has much huge temperature difference. We
Yep.
see many huge temperature differences throughout our universe, which means that the universe had a beginning and not so long ago, because there are still huge temperature differences between different areas in the universe. If the universe had been here for an eternity past, there would be zero temperature differences between different things in our universe, because they would have been in the same environment for an infinite amount of time. Excuse me one moment. Sorry about that.
No worries. So, do you believe there was a Big Bang?
Sure. God spoke and bang, it happened.
Okay. And so just to make sure that we are talking about the same thing, I understood that the Big Bang was basically an explosion of photons, for lack of a better choice, in all directions at the speed of light.
Well, wait a minute, sir. No, sir. The Big Bang had to explode into something. What did the Big Bang explode into?
I don't know.
See, that's a problem. You see, I happen to teach science, so I ask these basic scientific questions. The Big Bang itself is an explosion, okay? What did it explode into?
So what you're saying, it wasn't an explosion of photons, it was an explosion of space.
No, sir. Because if it was an explosion of space, then it exploded and space exploded and then something else followed it. That doesn't work either. So
Okay,
what
so
we're
it's an
talking
explosion
about
of light
is
and
that,
space?
again, the Big Bang doesn't work at all. Because number one, what banged? What gave it the energy to bang? And what causes it to have the energy to continue to expand in all directions simultaneously and increase in speed exponentially?
Okay. So I think what I heard you say when I asked earlier if you believe that there was a Big Bang, you said yes. And
Yes,
what I
God
hear you
spoke and
saying
bang,
that
it happened.
right. Okay. And I believe that what you're saying it's that the explosion of the Big Bang, the outer limit was basically the expansion of space, and that it was sort of an explosion of space and energy.
No, sir.
No. Okay. Maybe it would be quicker if you just explained what you understand of the Big Bang.
Well, sir, the Big Bang does not function in its current parameters, because in order for you to have an explosion, the explosion must first be matter that explodes into other matter. So where did the matter come from so the Big Bang could explode into the matter of what we call open space? See, what you're talking about when you say the Big Bang actually has to be space that exploded and dragged all of physicality with it.
Okay. Would it be possible that space was always there and was infinite, and that the Big Bang was just an explosion of energy?
Because from nothing, nothing comes. Why is there something rather than nothing?
Well, isn't space the definition of nothing?
No, sir. Space actually has particles in it. Space has debris in it. When we talk about space and we're talking about sending a spacecraft out into space, they have to have special types of deflectors because of the particles and the debris that are in space.
I understand that, but isn't space the space between the particles?
No, sir. It's not.
Okay.
The particles are in space. Space is measurable.
Okay. So if there's particles, the medium that they're in is what?
Space.
So I guess I'm not following here.
So,
like, I feel like in order for a
have
particle to exist,
in
it has
order
to
for you to have a
space to exist.
vacuum with no particles whatsoever, how would you get all the particles out of space so you could have no particles and have simply a vacuum?
I don't think that's easily accomplishable, but you could have a total
I don't
vacuum.
think it's accomplishable at all, sir.
Okay, agreed.
Space itself is actually made up of different matter.
Right.
Even what was his name? That physicist. Oh, I don't remember his name because I'm tired. But anyway.
So I guess maybe, yeah. Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
So I think maybe I understand when the average person probably talks about space, they're talking about the vacuum in just outside of the Earth's atmosphere. And I realize that the atmosphere sort of feathers out and the particles get less dense and less dense and less dense. But I was
What makes you think that, sir?
What makes me think that?
Yes, sir. What makes you think that the particles get less dense as we go further into space?
Sorry, the density of not the density of the particles themselves, but I guess more like the population density, like how many particles per square cubic meter, for instance.
Is that true throughout the entirety of space or only in certain areas of space?
I'm just talking about in the vicinity of the planet Earth. Like the air molecules and whatnot.
If you're talking about just in the vicinity of planet Earth, just right outside of our orbit, I'd have to agree with that. But as you go outside of that orbital area and you go past Mars into the Oort cloud and also different meteorite belts, then you're no longer talking about simple space that has no particles in it.
I would believe that, even in the space between solar systems within a galaxy, that there are still some particles floating through there. But what is the space between those particles?
The question you need to ask, sir, is what caused those particles to exist to begin with? In order for you to identify space and then compare and contrast it with the particles that are inside the space, then you have to have laws of identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. Where do those come from so you can identify particles of space?
I don't know.
There you go. See, once again, sir, we can talk about this all day long, and I can get you to say, I don't know 1,000 times an hour.
Well, that's what I'm trying to learn.
I know. That's what I'm trying to teach.
And
you know what, sir? I got to tell you, I do appreciate your questions. I don't want you to think I'm being rude to you. I'm not.
I don't feel like you are.
I'm simply Mr. Batman. I'm kind of a gruff individual. I'm old. And because I'm old, I tend to get a little grumpy when I'm tired. So I do apologize for my grumpiness.
Yeah, I'm willing to admit that everything I think I know might be wrong.
You know what? I'm willing to admit everything that I know cannot be wrong, because I know that I know of the Bible, of the God of the Bible. And that God of the Bible is the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. All the treasures of wisdom and knowledge are hidden in Yeshua.
Has this incoherent ramble ever convinced anyone in the history of all mankind?
Of the Bible. Do you know what, little girl? Why don't you go make somebody a sandwich?
Actually, I already did make a bunch of sandwiches today. Sandwiches are all made.
Really? Well, maybe you need to go make some more. You're behind your quota.
You didn't really mean that you're a teacher, right? They wouldn't actually put you in front of a group of students,
I am
would
a teacher.
I'm really good. I mean, I was concerned about the fate of the U.S., but now I'm ultra concerned.
It sounds to me like the science is making sense. It's just that I'm not. I feel like there's still some at least from my perspective, because I don't know the whole picture, it seems like I would have to make some assumption. I'd have to take like a leap of faith, more or less, in order to, take that assumption to say that, whatever was there, because I don't see the own research. And I will gladly go Google and learn these things and form my own opinion on them. But I do appreciate.
Might have cut out for a bit there. Sorry.
I do appreciate hearing other people's perspectives, and I take them into consideration when I'm forming my own opinion.
Mr. Russell, once again, I must say thank you very much for your questions. They have been sincere, and we've had a good discourse back and forth. I sincerely appreciate that. I'm going to tell you right now, sir, people like you are very rare in Discord, and I do thank you very much for your discourse.
And I thank you for your attention.
Mr. Batman, quick. Oh, go ahead, Strong. You've been waiting a while.
Go ahead, Ethernet.
I just have one question, and then whatever, you can go, it's fine. But Mr. Batman, is your question that you ask, where does time, space, and matter come from? Or a question you ask, I should say.
That is one of the main ones I ask. What is the cause of time, space, and matter, and how do you know?
Oh, okay.
Hey,
I like that the way you phrase it. All right.
Hey, can I ask a question real quick?
I don't know if you can or not, sir. If you're asking permission, that would be may I.
Okay, may I ask a question?
Why? Please do, sir. Thank you for your manners.
All right, Mr. Batman, this is kind of a fun question. I usually ask theists. Maybe you can answer or whatever. So what is?
I probably can.
So what is God made of? Because if he exists, then he has to have some sort of right. What's your answer, Mr. Batman?
God is made up of spiritual particles. He is a spiritual being.
Okay. I guess that's fine. Anyone else want to go?
Strong, what'd you have?
Yeah, Mr. Batman. First off, I just wanted to mention that most people in science consider the Big Bang an expansion and not an explosion. I just thought, for the record, that should be presented. But I wanted to ask you how old the Earth is, please.
About 6,300 years old, give or take a couple hundred.
And you must be teaching science in a religious school. Would that be correct?
Well, actually, sir, yes, I am now. But even when I was teaching it in a public school, I still taught the same thing. I will tell you right now that I was brought down to the principal's office 3 times a year, every single time I taught it, because an aide or a different teacher that would hear me teaching on it would say, "Oh, he's teaching religion in science class. You can't do that." I said, "Really? Prove to me that I'm wrong, and I'll stop teaching it."
What do you think about people who think that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old?
They're lying to themselves because the evidence shows quite the opposite.
How can you account for the fossil records?
Fossils, I'm sorry, I'm getting really tired. Fossils are billions of dead things laid down by sedimentary layers of water all over our planet. That happened about 4,500 years ago.
Do you believe in evolution?
Well, yes, sir. I believe it's a lie straight from the pit of hell.
If Noah's Ark was true, wouldn't there have to be like accelerated evolution to get the diversity of animals that we have now?
No, sir. There would just have to be speciation. The fact that these animals that would breed with one another would have traits that they would pass on to their offspring quite quickly. That's all.
In 4,000 something years?
Yep.
Okay. How old do you think the universe is?
About 6,300 years old.
How do you account for the light that reaches the planet from billions of years ago?
Well, actually, sir, it's not billions of years ago. You're talking about billions of light years. Light years are measurements of distance, not time. Now,
it's both.
No, sir, it's not. When you take into consideration that the Earth would have been below the event horizon, then time would not be moving at the same time as we do have time moving today. That's something you might want to look into. Russell Humphreys, Starlight and Time. It's an awesome book. Little technical. I doubt you could understand it, but maybe you could give it your best shot.
But there's a big difference between 13.8 billion years and 6,300 years, wouldn't you say? It's not like a close contest there.
Yes, sir. That's why the event horizon is so important, because time was not moving while we were below the event horizon. That's why stars from 15,000 or 15 million light years away was ever able to reach us, because we were below the event horizon and we were not moving as quickly as those beyond the event horizon were moving.
So if a star was 10 billion light years away, that accounts for what you're saying?
Sir,
their light?
If a star is 10 billion light years away, you do realize that that's 10 to the power of how many miles a beam of light travels in a year. So it's a measure of distance, not time.
It's a measure of distance over
sorry,
time.
sir. You speak over me one more time, I'm happy to mute you. So once again, it's a measurement of distance, not time. Now, since we know it's a measurement of distance and not time, then we can understand that certain things move at different rates. Not a problem.
It's a measure of distance over time. That's why they call it a light year. It's
Have
got
a
both.
nice day, sir. You're too stupid to have this conversation.
No, he's actually right. Like, I think, Mr. Batman, you should probably just get some sleep, because you're like going down a rabbit hole, increasing exponentially
no, I
wrong.
do need to get some sleep, because I get
Maybe it's a
up
good
early
time
in the
to go
morning
get a
teach
sandwich or something.
About a dozen different classes,
Yeah.
and I'm exceedingly tired. But the fact of the matter is, starlight, when it goes below the event horizon, then you have a time differential. You won't understand what this means because you're not smart enough to understand the time differential. So I'll let you look up that on your own. Mr. Russell, once again, thank you for speaking with me. It was quite a pleasure to talk with you.
I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Repent and believe the gospel.